join.
Of course.
So I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. We're at like over 40 students, so welcome
That's
everyone.
good.
Thank you so much for joining. I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Snow White, and I'm our student programs coordinator. You've probably seen a handful of emails from me, but basically advise a lot of you, run our fun events, and just get to help students get abroad. So please let us know if you guys have any questions throughout this. I'll be moderating the chat. So if you have any questions, fun comments, keep the cool gifts coming. I love them. They keep me entertained. Please drop those in the chat. If anybody does have any issues accessing the chat function, you may not be in the actual team. You might just be in the event. So what you can do is go ahead and leave this meeting if you have any issues. Screenshot or take a photo real quick of this code. Go into Teams, and then you can like search using a code. Find our team. It's called Florence Town Hall, USF in Florence Summer, something like that. Go ahead, join the actual team, and then join the meeting again, and you should be able to get access to the chat function. Otherwise, we will leave a couple, like maybe 20 minutes or so at the end to just take questions. So at that point, you'll have the opportunity to like unmute as well if you can't access the chat. But we should be good to go. So Jim, I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you. I'm sure by now all of you are familiar with who I am, but I'll make an introduction nonetheless. My name is Jim Poulos. I'm the Associate Director at the Education Abroad Office in USF World, and I have worked since the inception of the USF in Florence program. So ever since we began this, and even with program we did in Italy before Florence, I've been a part of it. And the reason I say that is having made a number of trips with the groups over and having been part of organizing this summer, which has been, our most unusual due to all the circumstances that surround us. I'm speaking to you with very concrete knowledge and very specific detail about the entire experience of today, which we're going to discuss the flights and the flight details. So we're going to welcome your questions, and Snow, who does so much more than she said about herself in her introduction, has agreed to moderate our chat. So we'll try to get to all of your questions, and then if we can't for one reason or another, you can always write to me independently. So let's begin with this, and I'll give you some real specific details and expound on those, most of which you've already become familiar with from my initial email. So we probably have people representing, and I'm sure you understand how our program is designed. There are 2 6-week sessions that are happening. And in the first 6 weeks, we're calling the A session, and concurrent with that is the Florence Business Program. And then in the second 6 weeks, we have the B session, the Florence Science Program, and the Psychology Social Behavioral Science Program. That takes place in the second 6 weeks. There are a couple of students fortunate enough that they are able to do both, and we call that the C session, is when they connect the A and B session and are there for 12 weeks and actually complete sets of classes in each. Now, what you've all received so far in the email has been discussing procuring your flights. Now, what we want to make sure everyone understands is the first thing I need to say, and I'll repeat this a number of times, is the information that I'm relaying to all of you is really not information that USF has found regulatory. This is information that has been passed on to us by the regulatory bodies. And one of the conduits for that has been the ACUPI organization. ACUPI is the acronym for the American Association of Colleges and Universities in Italy, of which USF is a member and I'm a representative. So we're really relaying this on behalf of, at the present time, and some of the rest of you who attended the town hall meeting we did last time, is that's a common expression that keeps occurring because the sands are shifting, but at the present time, this is the current information, and we really need everyone to abide by that. At the present time, what we've stated is flights should be, and you have the dates up here, so I won't belabor those, but we're looking at the first group starting May 15, departure to arrive in Italy on 16, because your dates are 16 to 25. Your departure date for the A session group is going to be on the 25th. So that's when you vacate your apartments. Remember, when you're flying against the sun, going from the USA to Europe, you're going to have an extra day added on. But when you're returning, you likely won't unless you booked a ticket that is long layovers and actually brings you into the next day. And then similarly for the second 6 weeks groups, you're having a program of June 27 to August 6. So you'll want to look for a ticket departing June 26th, the day before, has you arriving in Rome on the 27th. And then you vacate on August the 8th. So Snow, if you want to advance the slide for us, that would be good. So here's been the big question. COVID tested flights, and what are they, and why do we have these strict parameters that have been given to us? The COVID tested flights are requiring, and here's the insurance, if you will, on them. They're requiring that students have 48 hours prior to entering Italy, that you're required to submit a negative molecular or antigenic COVID test. But they also require that you arrive in Rome. Now, there's a very important reason for that, and this is, again, the current information. The important reason is Rome is able to test you again. And I'll run through this in a brief scenario. Rome is able to test you again, and if you have a negative test, which if you've tested within 48 hours, you'll be tested again at one of these three airports, Newark Liberty, New York JFK, or Atlanta Hartsfield. You'll be showing your proof of the negative test within 48 hours. They test you again, and then you arrive in Rome where you're tested a final time. What that allows them to know is you are COVID-free at that point. And the likelihood that in the, say, 8 or 8.5 hour transatlantic flight, if you tested negative, you're going to be positive by the time of arrival is extremely unlikely. I can't say it won't happen. It's extremely rare, and it has happened. If someone tests negative, then they have to self-quarantine. And if you self-quarantine, the local Ministry of Health is at the Rome airport, and they will take you to a hotel that's approved for that. And of course, as we've said in our other emailings, that's all at the student's expense. But provided we follow this plan, you must take the COVID negative test 48 hours before your flight. Some of you have been wondering where. CVS has been doing it, local physicians have been doing it, healthcare organizations, some walk-in clinics. Google in your area where they're giving that antigen test. And then make sure you get it within 48 hours because they're going to date it. Now, there's another site you might want to check, and that's Tampa International Airport. Now, you're not going to do that on the day you're going. You're going to do that 48 hours before. And Baycare Medical Health Group has people there as well. But check all of this. Make sure it's convenient for you. They have appointment times, and everywhere you go is going to have different parameters. Some may say you didn't make an online application. Some may say you didn't arrive in the right time frame for us to be able to give you the test. We have too many people back there. Make sure you check this thoroughly, but absolutely make sure you have that test. And then when you arrive in Rome, you test negative there, you proceed on to Florence. If you don't, and our fear is this is our concern, is that if someone did another flight and said, I don't know, I found a much cheaper ticket if I landed in London and I took another short flight, they may not be prepared with the same parameters to let you proceed on to Italy. So you may be required to self-isolate, even if you test negative. Different between quarantine as you show signs of the disease and you quarantine. Isolation is you could be negative, but you're required to self-isolate so they make sure that the symptoms don't erupt. So that we're clear now. How you get, because this has been a common question, how you're getting to Newark Liberty, New York JFK, Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson could be from Tampa, could be from Orlando, could be from driving if you live in New York. But your transatlantic flight is direct. You make sure it's a COVID-free flight, COVID-tested flight, they call them. And if you have any doubts about booking one on a major booking site like an Expedia or something, and it doesn't say COVID tested, please contact that airline directly and confirm. So hopefully that's clear to everyone. So it doesn't matter if you take Tampa, New York, and then from New York, you're going to fly on Alitalia Airlines directly into Rome. It's a COVID-tested flight. You have your 48-hour prior antigen test. You'll be presenting that. You'll be getting tested again in Rome, and then you'll be allowed to proceed on in Florence if you're negative with no self-isolation required. Landing somewhere else, all I can say is this is the current information. It could lead to someone being required to self-isolate for 10 days. And they reduced it, by the way, from just this morning. I got a circular that said in the nation of Italy, they've reduced self-isolation, not self-quarantine, self-isolation from 2 weeks to 10 days. And that just came out this morning. So it shows you how rapidly the sands are shifting with this. So if there are questions about that, we can address them later on. So please, Snow, go on so I make sure I cover everything and then we can get to questions.
Perfect.
Can you advance our slide here?
Yep.
So COVID testing, this is what you'll need. We've put on already. Molecular antigen test carried out no earlier than 48 hours. The COVID rapid test is carried out at JFK, Atlanta Hartsfield, and Newark is Newark Liberty, so you understand which airport's there, the international airport. And then upon arrival in Rome, like we said, they will test you there. It must be Rome Fiumicino. There's another airport in Rome. I don't even want to say its name, so you don't even hear it. But you'll see Fiumicino's the old name. Leonardo da Vinci's the new name. They named most of every airport in Rome after famous historical figures in Italy. So it's Leonardo da Vinci in Rome. And then you'll get the negative test there. All passengers will be tested, even with proof of a negative test before departure. So it's just a protocol for health. Following this flight path is going to ensure that all will go well and will get you into Florence without incident. So please change your slides now. Thank you. These are, again, guidelines that have come out, and you may have some other ones listed by your own airline. But they have said you must always have the surgical mask during the entire flight. Their recommendation, and I think it's a good idea, is to bring in your carry-on several masks. They're recommending changing one every 4 hours. I would not rely on airlines having an ample supply. I just not heard that, so we're following the protocols given to us. Have an ample supply so you can keep changing them. If you're vaccinated before, and this has been a big question, and you have both vaccines, currently, I have to keep repeating that, currently, there is no indication that having been fully vaccinated or even showing that you are fully inoculated, meaning your vaccine was 2 weeks prior, that you are allowed to fly. So still, even if you were fully inoculated a month ago, you still have to have the COVID antigen test. So, but I would recommend this. If you have been vaccinated, please bring your vaccination card with you. Do not have them laminated because they've already said, I just had my second one day before yesterday. And they said, don't laminate them because they may be doing boosters, they may be adding information. But what I'd like you to think of is have that proof of your vaccination almost like your passport. Because if restrictions for travel within Italy and within Europe loosen, it may be one of the requirements that you have is you can travel and visit other places, but we're only to curtail the spread of the disease. We can only let you if you've been fully vaccinated. So having that with you might, I don't know that it will, but we want to be prepared, might open up some travel opportunities for you that are currently restricted. So that's all being relooked at every week in the nation of Italy. Please be sure to check your departure airline on personal belongings, use of the overhead bins. That's a very good comment because there are sometimes they're going to say if there are certain things in there and they haven't been checked or they have been run through security, but you may want to protect them or need access to them. Make sure that that's always in your carry-on. And then definitely, which we probably have mentioned to you in the online orientation, you definitely want to have always access to immediate things. Think of your carry-on as you can survive with your carry-on for 72 hours. We're going to have our own orientation for Florence, but I think the general orientation covers it. I tell students, if you're, and I hope this happens to no one, if your checked baggage that goes in the cargo hold of the plane suddenly ends up in Honolulu for 72 hours, can you survive with everything that's on your person and in your carry-on? Then I think you know you're in good shape to travel. And we're going to talk about things that you're going to be bringing with you to Florence, some of which I'll be emailing to you in the days to come and by orientation day. So please, or I'm going to end up being guilty of talking too much, which I'm accused of and which is unfortunately quite true. Snow, can you hear me and can you advance the slide? Because you look frozen to me. Oh, you did it. You're still frozen.
Should be good. All right.
Okay. So you arrive in Rome, you're tested negative, you proceed on to Florence. I gave you all very, very clear step-by-step instructions, and we're going to go over those more in the orientation. But essentially what I recommend is that you take the train. And I won't go into the great detail of it now, but the train now, as the last few years, comes directly into the lower ground level floor in the airport itself. You see, the airport in Rome is actually in Fiumicino, which is about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Rome proper. So that's how it has its name, Fiumicino, and now Leonardo da Vinci. But prior to that, you had to do a shuttle and so forth. Now the actual train is there. You'll still stop in the main train station in Rome, and then you'll proceed on to Florence, and we'll look at the details of that more. Once you arrive in Florence, then you'll make your way onto the check-in site and then onto your apartments. And I'm recommending a taxi. I don't know if any of you, we can't really show hands in this, but if any of you have been to Florence, probably after you're there for 48 hours, you'll say, why did he have us take a taxi? I can find my way around beautifully. It was a little confusing at first. After a long transatlantic flight, I hate to go spending another 10 or 12 euro for you, but I would recommend you get in some cabs together. I know some of you are flying together, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. And just share some cabs and go from there to the check-in site. And I'll give you the exact address of the check-in site in Florence when we get to our orientation time. Now, this has been very important, and some of you have written to me about it, and that's the times about these trains. Most of you will be able to go onto the Eurostar or any of the sites that you look up rail travel in Europe, and it'll say Trenitalia or Rail Europe or something. And you'll find many different travel times between Rome and Florence. And you always, but I mean always, want to take a train that is approximately, like we have here, an hour 40 minutes. You'll see them listed as 93 minutes, 104 minutes, so it's a little more than an hour and a half, 1 hour 30 minutes. You never want to take one that says it's a commuter train. The best way to do this is to look at the times. The commuter trains are what the locals will take, saying, I live in Rome or I live in Florence. I work in Florence or Rome, but I don't live there, and I take a commuter train. Or I go to the university in Florence or Rome. But my town is several stops away and takes them a couple of hours commute on the train. Those trains will have times, and I'm not exaggerating, that could be 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, because they stop every 15, 20 minutes in another town and let locals on and off. So you want to make sure your travel time is going to be an hour and a half, a little bit more, hour and 35 minutes, hour 40 minutes, something in that area. And they leave very regularly, but go to the sites first, and you can look up Eurostar, Eurostar, or Trenitalia, Trenitalia, and you can go to these sites and you can actually find the routes. And you want to give yourself time to say, okay, if I'm in Rome and my flight's landing at 9:35 a.m., I obviously don't want to take a 10 o'clock train. I'll never make it through all this checking and everything. But you'll probably find a 12:30 in the afternoon train. And then you think, I don't look for the cheapest ticket, I look at the time. Is it 90 minutes? Is it an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, something like that? And by the way, when you're booking those, second class is what I recommend. Second class is more comfortable than first class on an airplane on these trains. So you'll save a little bit of money, and second class is perfectly fine. Remember that they're able to check into your apartment in in Florence when you arrive, between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. So some of you have written me specifically. I would look at your arrival time. I would give yourself 2 or 3 hours to get through all of the testing and all of the baggage and customs and everything, and expect to find a train ride that is going to be a couple of 3 hours later. Say you can give yourself 3 hours. And then look for the time for travel being about an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes. And a second class ticket, I think you'll be very pleased with. And we'll go through specifics of doing that more with the orientation about actually changing trains and paying for all of this and money and all of that sort of stuff. But that's your arrival in Rome and transfer on to Florence. Snow, could you go to the next slide for us, please? Oh, I hope you hear me. There it is.
You seeing it?
So
Okay.
okay, I can see it. Very good general tips. I mean, obviously you can all read this as well, but it is good to, as suggested here, doing an incognito or a private browser. When you start to check a flight several times, you'll start to even see them send you offers for them. And part of that is because you're being tracked and so forth. And I think some of the slide just moved on us, Snow. I don't know. Okay, and there I think everyone can see it. I would watch the budget airlines and, if you do travel insurance, I would price those out. What did Snow right here? Overpacked so much I could never have lugged all my stuff in the train station and check in on foot. That's a good orientation thing. I definitely want to see it, and see who gave that a thumbs up too. Very good. Yeah, overpacking. We'll talk about packing because that's one of the things that people do, and there'll be a lot of traveling. Once you get to Florence, you're in your temporary home, and then you can worry about how am I going to get all this stuff I bought in Florence back to the United States, because I think every summer we ship most of Florence back to Tampa, a piece at a time and in students' luggage. But that's beautiful. Why shouldn't you do that? The packing light. I want to return here to saying, you see your flight, it says it's COVID tested, it's probably safe. I still recommend contacting the airline. You may have to call an 800 number and wait a while, but say, I am doing this. If you have any route other than Rome and you've purchased a ticket already, I would contact them immediately and make sure, in case something has changed and they know something that has not been passed on through the parameters to the authorities, but an airline knows this, make absolutely sure that when you arrive, you are not going to have to self-isolate, that you can be tested and you'll be allowed to go on to your final destination. That's key. Rome, we know you will. And I don't even want to speculate because there are already things in newspapers and on websites saying Milan Malpensa is about to open up. And that's another thing. There are two big airports in Milan. Let's not speculate. Let's go with what we're certain of. These are very good, very, very good websites that I think you put up, Snow. So I like all of those. And you may want to continuously check them. And you may want to go directly to airlines. In preparation for this, I stayed on hold with Delta, with Lufthansa, with different airlines, Alitalia, just making sure that someone's there who can answer questions, and I found good results. I said, is this a COVID tested flight? I'm leaving New York on Alitalia on this. I'm arriving in Rome. There are no stops. That's what I see. I will be tested at the airport, and if I test negative, I'll be allowed to proceed on if my final destination is not Rome. They said, absolutely. You just have to have the molecular antigen test, everything that we've written you. Follow that, please, step by step, almost like it's a dance. Don't step outside of the beat, and I think everything is going to go perfectly fine. And we'll discuss in great detail in orientation if something were to happen. And if, God forbid, somebody tested positive, you have 24-hour a day, 7-day a week support. So we're always there with you. But let's try to avoid the near occasion of things happening by preparing ourselves well. Can you advance our slides? No, I'm looking at the time thing. I've got to leave time.
Jim, I believe this was actually our last slide.
It was. Okay, well, good. I finished with some things. Let me make a couple of other comments before I go on, then I was going to save them for later. A number of you have been extremely proactive, and I tip my hat to you. And you have written me already, and I continue to extend the offer, that if you want me to share your name and your email address with other members of the group, with the hope that you're going to find a traveling companion, I think that's brilliant. And I know some of you already have. I would also consider using the GroupMe page that everyone has set up. And I think we can actually even put that in the chat if you haven't already received it from me. But people are adding all the time. And I think it's an excellent, excellent opportunity not only to meet one another, but to make this little more, let's say, less conventional journey, the actual sojourn from here to Florence and back, together, and to have some other people you can rely on. And I think it's also good outside of just having traveling companions, because if someone does need assistance, if someone says my cell phone battery died, something's wrong with, I can't charge it, you always have traveling buddies there who can assist you. I think it's a journey anyone can make on their own, but in the event you're not an experienced traveler, or you say to yourself, well, you know, I've flown before and I've kind of done things on myself, but it's never been internationally. And it certainly hasn't been in this global pandemic. And I would go with others. I would suggest that you do. So I'm not trying to create unofficial groups, but if you're doing that, I encourage you strongly to do that. And let's see, some other things are coming up in chat. Can we fly from Tampa to one of these airports, or should we drive to prevent exposure on the first night? I think you're okay to fly, and a lot of people are, but I think it also depends on what the drive is. So I'm seeing Patricia Alchambeau's comment, and if I think your drive is convenient, that is an excellent point, because in my message, and thank you for expressing it that way, Patricia, in the orientation you'll hear me say, but I say to you from now too, being a little extra vigilant, I know everyone is, so I'm not implying everyone isn't, but being a little extra vigilant before your flight, I think is wise. Maybe a little extra care to make sure that there isn't any exposure. I'm sure everyone is being careful and following guidelines. Is to your advantage, so that there is no testing issue and that you're allowed to board. Because the question that came up with some folks in an earlier one, when we have students there now, I have several students over there for the entire semester. And they said, well, Jim, what happens if we test negative? I'm sorry, we test positive in New York? I said, well, then you don't go. Well, can they do that? I said, they absolutely can. So that's why we're trying to take these measures. But if everything goes well, and you still will have support if you tested positive, God forbid for anyone anywhere, but if you did, we will start the delivery of your courses online. And after the period of intermittent time that we're supposed to wait is passed, you'll proceed right on. So, but let's avoid that. So I appreciate you doing that. So I don't know how long the drive you're talking about is, Patricia, but I think you can fly, and most people probably will, because most of our students are going to be coming from this area, or local area. Sandra has written.
Jim, can I interrupt you real quick?
Of course.
So just to kind of clarify what this flight ticket process is going to look like, should students book, let's say students are in Tampa right now and are going to be leaving from the Tampa area, would they book a ticket from Tampa to Rome and ensure that it is a COVID tested flight with a layover in Atlanta or JFK or Newark? Or should they book a flight from Tampa to JFK and then another ticket JFK or Newark or Atlanta to Rome?
I would try to book a single round trip ticket, if at all possible. And that's a good way to express it. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear on one of the first slides. I would say, from whatever your departure gate is, let's use Tampa and say it's Orlando. I would book it to Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson, Newark Liberty, New York JFK. I would try to keep one continuous round trip ticket. One of the reasons I understand from one of our meetings with the Aquapy organization that they're encouraging that is it's fewer instances for something to go wrong. Mm-hmm. So if something was delayed, if you booked separate tickets, I'm going to get a separate ticket from Tampa to New York and then another ticket New York to Rome, and I break these legs, they call them legs of the journey up, then suddenly you think, oh my gosh, something went wrong and I was delayed because it was raining in Tampa. Well, no one's obligated to even try to assist you on that. To them, you're a new passenger. So I would book it all as one continuous flight, and I would book it for the dates of the program, like we said in the email, so that you're arriving and returning on the dates. I'm going to be issuing you all letters that are new immigration requirements that indicate that you're students. Because, at present, and again, there's the thing, it's at present, tourist travel is not allowed. So for questions that have come up and said, but if my whole family wants to join me at the end of the program, I hope it changes, but I would not invest in tickets now. Because the airline isn't asking if you're going on business or as a student. The airline is selling a ticket. You will have documentation that you're going as a student. You'll have that from me, and it'll show the dates of the program. Book a continuous ticket. I would not book a layover. I would try to keep yourself continuously moving on it. If there's a ticket on the return or somewhere that has you delayed because of a delay in the airport, and that's the only flight available, and you end up arriving another day, that doesn't matter. You've already made exit from Italy. So that's how I would find it, yes. And then Sandra wrote, and should it be direct on the returning flight? I would say yes. That's what we have been told, one continuous direct flight.
Awesome. So they could more than likely fly from Rome
Yes.
back to Tampa if you're, coming home to Tampa.
Yes, we'll reverse the entire process. We'll
Okay.
fly from here to Rome. We take a train to Florence. Similarly, you'll say, okay, I have to check out of my apartment on my official checkout date. I need to get to the Florence train station, which is going to be 15 minutes walking or a 5-minute cab ride. And then you're going to get to the airport in Rome. And now you have to think about your flight time. So you have to calculate that, leave yourself plenty of time for that. And
Okay.
checking in at the airport and being tested. And you'll likely, at least currently, the point is you have to be tested again when you exit. But that'll be happening in Florence, and we'll have information to you as that unfolds with the local health ministry.
Okay. And I have 2 submitted questions about
Absolutely.
leaving Italy.
Okay.
So the first one is, can we leave our apartments in Florence a day early to catch an early flight out of Rome on August 6th?
I'd have to say now no until we know what your class is. Ordinarily, but this is ordinarily, you'd have no exam on the 6th. It would be on the 5th if you're leaving at the ending date. But I can't say what every professor might do, what every class requirement is. So the program is scheduled till its final day. I would say to look for a later flight, trains that go between Florence and Rome, and believe it or not, because it's only 90 plus minutes, and I live in Pinellas County, I commute to work at USF an hour in the morning very early, and it's an hour and a half coming back. So people actually live in Florence and work in Rome, and live in Rome and work in Florence. So they take those commuter trains. They could be beginning as early as 6:37 in the morning. So it wouldn't be a problem if you said, well, my return flight from Rome to come back to the US is at noon. Say, how am I going to get there early and check in 3 hours before my flight? Because you'll have gotten a 6:30 or 7 a.m. train from Florence to get to Rome.
Awesome. All right. And then another question about coming home. Can students purchase their returning tickets later on and separate from their tickets to Italy?
My fervent plea would be no, let's follow the parameters. I know that sometimes it may represent a savings. And again, I'm falling back on it with regrets that I'm getting these from the regulatory bodies and authorities in Italy. They're not certainly, and they're certainly not USF's. Students should do this. We're relaying what information has been given to us currently by the health ministry and the national government bodies that are overseeing the COVID crisis. But they're recommending not to break up flights. They're recommending to do direct transatlantic, and they are recommending to do round trip. So I've done it before myself. Before COVID, I said, I've got a really incredible flight and I can save the office a fortune by taking JetBlue to New York and then another flight here, and I have. But they're saying do not do that now. So.
Okay. I see a handful of questions in the chat about financial aid and scholarships. Let's finish chatting about travel first, and we can hit that at the end.
Of course.
So next question, Jim. Do students have to wear surgical masks on the plane, like the blue ones, or are cloth masks acceptable?
I've not heard a differentiation. I've heard them say, and I can go to, actually, if you forgive me, I'm going to go to my screen here a moment, and I will look up exactly the wording that they gave. Whoops, except it just went blank on me.
And I'm just going to blanket this as well while he's looking in his email. Check with your airline. A lot of these specific details.
Yes.
Make sure you're just checking with your airline to make sure you're good on everything.
Exactly. That's a very good point. They don't have any differentiation. They just say mask, an approved mask. So I think the surgical that we're doing here or the cloth ones, but to be able to change it seems to be the main thing.
Yeah. I would say, I know the surgical masks aren't the most environmentally friendly, but if we're switching them out every couple hours, probably easiest to go with those, to just wear it and toss it.
Yeah.
But totally up to you.
And there's been no mention of having anything with N95 and so forth. So there's nothing mentioned of that whatsoever.
Perfect. All right, Jim. So is there a way to sign up for your COVID test when you get to the airport in Rome? Or is it just you go through customs and then there's a line and then they just start swabbing everyone?
There is, and they've done a beautiful job of doing a PowerPoint presentation they've sent out to the Aquapi group, and they've relayed to me, and they have it all clearly marked out in paths. So
Awesome.
you'll have lines, and it'll be in multiple languages, and say, go here, and there are attendants all this way. And by the way, when we're talking about the COVID testing and the flights arriving and taking your train to Florence, all along this route, you will have many English-speaking people. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I've landed in this country. The intercom is coming on, and they're saying, buongiorno, signore, signore, donde sta? You're like, oh my gosh, it's all in Italian. English is spoken widely. Signage is in English, and you will get there from the train station ever perfectly fine with just English. But
Awesome.
they will have it mapped out. You don't sign up for that in advance. Good question. They're all good questions.
And do you know, Jim, is there a cost for the COVID test when you arrive in Rome at the
I've
airport?
not seen that listed, but I would be prepared for costs that could occur, and there could be, and then through my search, um, could be costs for doing the pre-departure test. Some places are doing it free. Again, it's something to investigate, and which is nearest to you, and which, if there is a COVID test associated. On your exit from Italy, there probably will be a cost associated with the COVID test. I don't anticipate it being anything outrageous, but again, we're asking for details on that. This is all a little bit new, but it should not be a shocking cost to say, it's $1,000. No, it would be, 20, 30, 40. We don't know, something in that area.
Okay. Another really good question. Should students buy their train tickets online now or just buy it at the train station when they get there?
Great question. And I've had to do that. I've done both. I'm going to advise to buy it there. And this is another reason, because, if we get delayed, for whatever reason, we arrive and we say, oh, the line is so long, and they didn't think 10 flights were going to be cleared by weather, and so everyone is arriving from all these countries, and the custom line looks like, oh, it's endless. I would say to probably buy it there.
Perfect.
And I think, too, we should remember that tourism is not at its peak these days, so it's not going to be the most crowded time for either the train or for the airports. But I understand they are running it beautifully. I've spoken to our colleagues there. When our students who are there currently said everything ran smooth as silk. But I would buy it there just to make sure that you arrived and you said, I'm here, I'm at the train station, it's 11:15, the next train is 12:15, there are 10 of us together, hopefully, maybe there's 20 of you together. Let's all get our tickets at these kiosks, and we're going to be getting on that platform. That man told me in English with a very nice Italian accent, I'm going to go on platform 26, and in an hour and a half, I'm going to be in Florence. Then I'm going to take a cab to the school, they're going to get me to my apartment, and I can exhale.
Awesome. All right. So another quick question on flights. Are students able to arrive early in Rome and then travel to Florence, but still following all the same precautions that we've talked about, just coming in a couple days early and
Let's see.
on their own dime?
Well, among the parameters, they said we should mirror the dates of the program, which is what my letter is going to say, that you're going from May 16 to June this, and so we probably don't want to deviate outside of that. The other thing that concerns me about doing that is the potential of saying, well, how do you need to be retested? Because if somebody said the test is only when you leave the airport, I have no word on that. So you're in the airport, we're testing you, now you're free to go. Now you're in the hotel, or you're going to your final destination. I don't know about that. I would recommend following what we only have been told at this point. And I really regret that I can't give more a specific, precise information. The answers that I have given that have been more precise, like about when should you buy your ticket and so forth, is because I know that's the case. It's unchanged, and I've done it myself. This is new, and we want to make sure we follow what everyone is advising.
All right. Let's see. I have another student who just wanted to clarify, heading there, is a layover the way to go or two separate tickets? So we want to do a layover, right?
Yes, I would try to get one continuous round trip ticket.
Perfect.
And most of the airlines have said, most of the authorities said it gives the fewer opportunities for the airlines to have something happen. Mechanical failure. When it's a separate flight, they say, well, you have one flight with our airline, but then I understand you're getting to New York and you're doing a flight with another airline. I really can't help you with that. But if you booked it all through them and they code share, as they call it, this airline is going to be working with Delta, let's say, then they're obligated to help you complete the journey.
Perfect.
Which isn't to say that the transatlantic one wouldn't either, but I think it's more continuous. They have a locator number for you. They'd be able to track you in this system and say, okay, well then let's get you on flight such and such at 4:35 this evening. You know, they'd be able to look you up. Otherwise, they'd say, I can help you with this, but I don't know what Delta's going to do for you if I can't look you up in their system.
Okay. So I have another student asking about connecting flights on the way back. I'm going to just read out this. Does my return flight have to pass by the international airports provided that we left from, or can it be directly to my city? I'm not 100% sure what you're asking there. Maybe we can clarify that a little bit. But if students are traveling through other countries as layovers on the way home, what does that look like, meeting kind of those international standards for other countries?
Yes, I'm again following the parameters. They're saying it should be kind of the reverse of what we did. We go, let's say Tampa, New York, Rome. We should be doing Rome, New York, Tampa. But the airline might say, I don't bring you back into New York. I can bring you back into this or that. Check with them on every single leg of it. If you have a doubt, if it deviates from our path, check with the airline. Because if you're going in back into the U.S. through another airport, they maybe can't do any testing to let you back into the States. And they'll say, well, when you get back into Washington, let's say, on your way back, you might have to self-isolate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we want to break that up. If anyone is planning and we're not advising it, to change that route, you just need to definitely check with them that you're not going to have any incident when you return. Just wherever you return, the gate, they call it, your returning gate, is not going to restrict you. They say you're getting back into Tampa, but I have to say you're not going to be allowed to return home. You're going to be told you need to be escorted with a group to a COVID-safe hotel, and it's at your expense. So all of that may change tomorrow, and I just regret that so much.
And just to put this into like sort of a context, let's say you're leaving Italy, you get your COVID test done in Italy, 24 or 48 hours before you leave.
Right.
Then you have a layover in Spain, and then you fly to the United States. When you get to the United States, they're going to say, well, your flight just came from Spain. It looks like you were in Spain, even though this COVID test is from Italy. What's going on here? So again, not saying that there will be an issue, but double check
everything.
Call your airline, look at the, what would be a good website, Jim, to check? Would it be like the State Department website for incoming travelers?
I think, and one of the first is really what you mentioned, is checking with the airline, because they are linked through all of this, and they have to have in this climate, they have to have their flights approved. So if they're booking a flight, they would be able to say, no, because when you're returning from Italy, you need such and such. An example is we had a few students going outbound, and they went and were told a flight was, going to be fine. And when they arrived in a country other than where they were going, I just don't want to say specifics, they said, oh, we didn't need one test. We needed 2 tests here. They said, well, we only had 1. They said, well, my advice is we can book you on a flight to another country that maybe has 1, but you can't leave the airport. You can't even leave this restricted area. So they paid for a small flight. They went to another country who accepted it, passed them through, and then they went on to their final destination. So they were lucky that's all that happened, because everything showed negative. But it was a failure of having 2 tests for one country instead of 1 test that was required by the country that was their original destination. So with all of it being unknown, I just am really, really hesitant about changing anything on the return. If you do have some, or some of you may have special connections, someone works in the airline industry, something, contact them and make absolutely sure, particularly if there's any layovers, any other countries, that there will not, and you must underscore it with them, there will not be any self-isolation requirement. Because we've had comparatively few students traveling during this COVID crisis, but we have had some. And we've had students going to, for example, parts of the Far East, where they passed and had a negative test with us. When they arrived there, they tested positive, and they said, it's probably just the test. We have a different test. So you can wait here and be comfortable for 2 weeks. And they were, and everything worked out fine. They were negative.
Well,
But anything can happen. So let's, what we know, we're sure of, we know, we want to follow.
all right, thanks, Jim. Another question: are trains going back and forth between the two cities 24/7? I believe in the email it said like 11:38 is the last train to
Yeah.
like 6 a.m. leaving
Correct.
from Rome to Florence.
Exactly.
Another student said she saw the earliest train getting to Rome at 10:30. I'm going to say we might want to like double check those search parameters because again, there are a lot of people going between Florence and Rome for work and all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
A little bit earlier, so hopefully we can find some earlier flights, or excuse me, earlier trains.
Yeah, and Snow, you're most correct in the first one. Generally, and this, may have, this is a holiday coming up, or this is a long weekend or something, but generally they will shut down, before midnight hour, and then they start up about 6:30 a.m. So I think you should be able to find some. And I know it begs the question, well, then why don't I, if I found it, why don't I make sure I get a seat? I'll book it from now. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think you're probably going to be safe if you got it when you arrived. And remember, too, that when we talk in the orientation about having active phones at work and we'll work internationally and how to do that properly, you'll always be able to reach someone and say, look, they filled up this car and the train, and the next one is going to be 3 hours later. I can wait here at the train station, but I'm going to be after 7 p.m. and I know you close. That way we're in communication. We can work on a solution.
Mhm.
But we want to shoot for these parameters, and we want to be certain everything goes as smoothly as possible. Then if an exception pops up, we'll be prepared to deal with it, especially if we can communicate with you. So
Perfect. And I see a student said, so should we not worry about thinking about train times when booking flights? I would say keep it in mind. As long as you're arriving during like normal hours, you should be okay. If you're arriving at some extreme hours on either end, then we should probably worry, or departing.
Yeah. I would try to get an early morning arrival in Rome. And my colleagues who work with me, maybe some of the students I've communicated with know, I have really peculiar hours. I'm early to everything, and I don't sleep long hours, so I have a long, long day. But I would try to get the absolute earliest arrival time into Rome. And I would get a moderate one, I guess, depending on the availability, a moderate one on your departure. I would not try to get a 10 a.m. flight leaving Rome to come back because that's going to be hard to make. I'd look for one maybe a little later in the afternoon. So then if you took a 6:30 train out of Florence, you have a long, long time till you have to worry about your flight leaving for the United States coming back. I'd get an early one coming in, very early coming in, or as early as you can. And then you'll say, oh, I have a choice of 2 trains that are going to Florence in the next few hours. I'll pick this one. Or some of us have been communicating through the group me or through our own emails, and there's another flight coming. Why don't we wait and all of us will go together? There's another 10 people coming. Why don't we all go together and do this? And you can think about it, in advance that way.
Awesome. All right. I see Tanisha asked if she could come unmute and ask a question. So yeah, go for it, Tanisha.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Tanisha.
Hi. Oh, wait, it's Minecraft. No.
It's what?
I changed it to this one. Wait,
That's
I don't want to
okay.
seem gamey. Okay, wait, sorry. Great.
It's who we want to see anyway. Don't worry about the back.
Okay, so my question is, I just want to be sure about the COVID test thing. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm gonna fly out from either Tampa or Orlando.
Right.
So at the airport in Tampa, let's say, I need to have a COVID negative test, right? And I'm gonna show it to the airline and say I'm negative. So when I go to JFK, my layover there, I'm okay. But I will show another test in JFK as well to go to Rome.
No, it'd be the same one. Mainly what you're required to have the COVID tested flight. They'll see, and that's another reason, Tanisha, I'm glad you bring it up that way, is you book the flight is one flight. Ideally, they won't need it to let you board your flight to New York. But when they see you're doing the round trip to Rome, they may want to, continuing on to Rome, they may want to see it. But it's actually New York where you're going to be presenting the COVID test negative. And they'll say, now that's the COVID tested flight. So what you're imagining is if we've all done that and we're on this flight, Alitalia flight 1998, going directly into Rome, arriving 9:35, everyone has shown a negative test. So everyone here on the plane, masks on and everything, well, we're all negative. So I come and sit next to you and you say, well, I don't worry about this person because I know he tested negative too. And then when we arrive there, we're tested again. And then presumably it's they've said it's such a rare incident that in that short time, someone would pop up positive. Then we test negative there and they say you're free to go.
Okay, so that'll be if I do like a round trip from Tampa JFK to Rome. I am thinking of doing JFK to Rome and then Tampa to JFK. So it's kind of like two separate flights.
So booking them separate, it's not, I was saying earlier, it's not the most advisable only because of now, but I've done that before COVID. I mean, I certainly have done that, and I got a JetBlue flight right from Tampa to JFK. But in the COVID, what would happen is what if we were rained out here in Tampa and we were late for that flight in New York? From here, they might not be able to help us. So that's why they're suggesting kind of booking all of this together. That's what
I'm just worried that if I do that, I might need like two evidences. I don't know how many papers do I need for like I don't know if the airline is gonna keep it like the negative
No, they should.
my
No.
results.
I've not heard of that. I've not heard. So you board in Tampa and they say we just took your positive results. No, that's yours. I don't believe that's going to be taken because that's another reason again too to say, well, they took it there. Well, they shouldn't have. But if you were booked on a continuing flight with the same code share, so JetBlue was doing business with Alitalia or Delta, they'd say, oh, don't take it from this young lady. She's going to need it for the next leg of her journey. They're tracking you all through their system. Just lowers the chance of something going wrong.
Okay, good. Yes. Okay, I think that's mainly my question. Also, if I have another question about like a specific flight, can we like meet later on? Like,
Sure. I mean,
can I send you like an email and stuff?
absolutely. And if there are questions to follow up, and I see lots of wonderful questions, I don't know that in our time frame we'll be able to get to all of them. But I saw here Megan has written, would you have to recheck your bags in JFK? Or if they lose your bags, they really won't send them on to Italy. Megan, you bring up an excellent point here, and it's this. I'm going to sound like the proverbial broken record, but you see, if you did separate flights, and they said, well, two things that happen. One is, and I'm making up JetBlue, let's say Airline A says, you're not flying internationally. All I have you is booked from Tampa to New York. So your baggage limit is 20 pounds. Or you pay. But if you're booked with them to go on to Italy, they say, oh, now your baggage is 65 pounds. So that's one thing that would have happened, COVID or not, when you book it as one group ticket. And we think about packing. So all of it's going to be managed a little easier. But if you arrive in New York and it's a separate flight, then yes, you have to go get your bags and you have to recheck them with your new flight. Whereas if you're leaving Tampa and you've booked the flight as one continuous passage and round trip, you'll say to the gate, to the desk here in Tampa, here are my bags. Could you check them onto my final destination in Rome? And they'll say, absolutely. So you're not going to be rechecking them. So it's a good point for that reason too. But the bottom line is always this, no matter what, COVID or not. If an airline tells you to pick up your bags, you have to go pick them up. And I've had that happen where I said, well, I checked I know the routine. They want everybody to claim their bags and claim them again. And I don't know, they want you to do it for security reasons, many things. But if they lose your bags or they send them on, eventually they will. But again, it's always better if you're doing business with one airline that way. After COVID, I'd say, yeah, book flights. I've gotten creative and I've booked flights. I'm ricocheting all over the country to save myself $50, like a pinball machine. I'm like, what does that guy do? I love to fly. So for me, it's a joy. For me, my job could be taking off and landing and testing airplane seats, but they have never offered me one.
All right, Jim. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I know we still have a lot of questions about financial aid and scholarship.
Yes. Okay.
So real quick, scholarship notifications have gone out, or They are supposed to go out via AwardSpring. If you didn't get an email from AwardSpring, you can go in and check your application status. But if you were awarded a scholarship, you should have been also notified by email as well from Dr. Avalon in our office. So presumably, if you haven't heard anything by this point, unfortunately, you did not receive a scholarship. Feel free to reach out to our office. I'll drop my email in the chat. There's not a ton of other scholarships available at the moment, but we can always brainstorm together on some ideas. So feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions about funding. And then, Jim, can you talk about financial aid, payment deadlines, and what that kind of looks like if you're getting financial aid and then you have to pay it, that kind of thing?
Well, the main thing is if you're receiving financial aid, the first thing is please make sure you visit their office or virtually visit their office and speak with your financial aid counselor. Make sure you've done all of your paperwork prior to departure that you're required to do. You've checked all the appropriate boxes, you've signed everything electronically or however they're wanting you to do things now in the virtual world, and that everything is prepared to go. You will be registered in time to receive your aid. So we're going to do your physical registration in OASIS by our office. We will do that. So don't worry about trying to register for anything. If they're asked by financial aid, is this direct credit, transfer credit, what kind of credit? This is direct credit. But you do not try to register yourselves. Education Abroad will register you in OASIS. So this is all going to work in one system. Your aid, if you're guaranteed and you receive your award letter, and you're counting on that to pay some of your balance, then please write us and we can see about doing an exception. It's not a guarantee because you have to be paid in full 30 days prior. But if we have a guarantee you're receiving aid, then perhaps our financial office can say there is a promissory thing that you can sign, and for that same exact amount, let's say you're getting $2,000 of a Pell Grant, and we're sure the Pell Grant's coming in, we can document that, then we can say, all right, pay all but that amount, and then when it comes through your OASIS account, it'll get siphoned off and pay for your Italy expenses. So that's one option. Never can be guaranteed, but we want to pursue it as soon as possible. Same with scholarships or anything of that nature.
Awesome. Yeah, so technically that's not
that kind of thought. We can't really necessarily say it's deferring it.
Yeah.
We're not really empowered to do that, but we can say about saying, well, we'll do a temporary non-payment, but we can only do it when we have proof. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important to say, Uncle Sam has said you're getting X dollars. Now we can talk about, can we don't say defer, but can we do a promissory part that's forthcoming,
And Jim, real quick, I have another student saying they haven't received their confirmation email yet, and then some that are having issues still with the Florence registration. Can you chat about that real fast?
Yes. Some of you have done this, and we've written to several this morning. Once you do it, it doesn't automatically say, here's your confirmation letter, but it takes them a while to process. And when they process what's called your official registration, they'll send it to you and copy me, and I reconfirm it against our records, and then I email it to you. And I'll either have a question about that, or I'll say, this is your official registration. If you see any discrepancies or have any questions, contact me immediately. Then it's completely done. And then from there, we'll be registering you in OASIS. If you're having difficulty with the system in Florence University of the Arts, and the full name is Florence University of the Arts, the American University Florence. So you sometimes see FUA, AUF. But if you're having difficulty with, just for simplicity, with FUA, let me know what the issue is. And many times, if you even send me a screenshot, I can say, oh, I know what that's doing. It should be like we found a time conflict and they had to reprogram suddenly. It's just something computer hiccuped. But we can get those addressed.
And we have a couple questions on the payment deadline. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. It does depend on your program dates. So if you're doing summer A, that's going to be May 1st. If you're doing summer B, that's going to be June 1st. But again, if you're getting financial aid and it's not going to pay out until after that, shoot Jim or I an email if you have proof of your aid at the moment all ready to go. and we can discuss that with our fiscal office. Again, we can't guarantee any kind of deferment. That's not like, we're not doing anything through financial aid or, you know, anything like that, but our office can take a look at your aid and potentially do some sort of promissory note. So I think that's about it. I know we're out of time. I know there's still a handful of questions.
Okay, we'll get to that someday.
What was that, Jim? Apologize.
No, go ahead and write, and we'll be able to address things as quickly as we can. And then, again, I encourage all of you, and I'm not arranging flights in case you go, thanks for encouraging that, and I didn't want to sit next to them, or so I'm being silly. I can't arrange for flights or do them unofficially even, but I encourage all of you, try to explore traveling together, because I think you'll be much happier. I think you'll be feeling safer. I think you'll have good company. And if someone missed something, or as I say, somebody's phone doesn't work, you'll always have companions to do things with. And they're just a little bit challenging times. And, you know, we'll get through them if we work in harmony. And I think we will.
Awesome. Last question, because it's super easy. Where do we make the payments? That is on your Oasis account. You should have been billed the full program cost, so you can go in there and pay it on your Oasis account.
Yeah.
Jim, I think we're over time, but again, if you guys have any additional questions, please email Jim or I, and we will take care of you. And anything else you wanted to bring up, Jim, before we head out?
No, I would be on the lookout. Keep monitoring your email. Now it gets hypercritical. Keep checking your email, checking your email, checking your email. Did Jim write me? Did Jim write me? Did Jim write me? Almost like it's a mania. Because soon there's going to be orientations coming up. I need you to fill this out. There's something else you told me about this. We all got a letter about that. I'm supposed to print this out in color and carry it with me on the plane. I'm supposed to take this and that. All kinds of things we have to do together. But we will do them, and they will be seamless, and we will get through it as long as we communicate.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Safe travels, everyone.
Thank you, Snow. Thank you all for coming.
Seeing you
I look
all.
forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You as well. Bye.